Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
Question number 1. In agricultural practices, higher inputs give higher yield. Discuss how. Okay. So, agricultural practices need high yielding varieties of seeds. Alright. They also need irrigation. Then to improve the soil fertility, we need fertilizers and manure. Then during production, we need insecticides, pesticides. Apart from that, machines and tools are required for plowing, for harvesting and for other such activities. Now all these inputs, we need money to buy these inputs. So if a farmer is putting up higher inputs, if he is able to buy these inputs, then he will definitely have higher yield. He will get more crops from the given piece of land. On the other hand, if the inputs are low on small pieces of land, if the farmers are not using fertilizers, they are not using good variety of seeds, the yield will be less. So they are directly proportional. Higher inputs will lead to higher yields. Question number 2. What are micronutrients and macronutrients related to crop production? So just like all other living organisms, plants also need nutrients. Alright. Those nutrients which are required in small quantities are called micronutrients, and on the other hand which are required in larger quantities, they are called macronutrients. Now this macronutrients include nitrogen, phosphorus, then potassium, calcium, magnesium and sulfur. These are 6 of the nutrients which plants require in greater quantity, while there are 7 micronutrients. Total of these are 13 plus 3 other nutrients, which that is carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. These are obtained through water as well as air. Apart from this, there are 7 micronutrients which plants need from the soil, but in very small quantity. The example can be zinc, iron, manganese, alright, then chlorine, alright. There are 7 such micronutrients. So these are nutrients required by the plant. Micro means in small quantities, macro means in larger quantities, alright. Next, how do plants get nutrients? So first of all, plants get nutrients from water. So water provides, I told you, since chemical formula for water is H2O, so it provides hydrogen and oxygen. Second is through air. Air contains carbon dioxide, which provides carbon and oxygen. Alright. All other nutrients are obtained from the soil. So plants get nutrients from water, air as well as soil. So from the soil they get 13 other nutrients, like the examples which I have shown you here. Next question, what is manure? State 2 advantages of using manure. Now what are manure? These are natural organic substances which are used to improve the fertility of the soil. They are obtained by decomposition of plant waste, natural waste like plant waste, farm waste, animal waste like cow dung, then vegetable peels, domestic waste. So using these natural waste products, they are decomposed and converted into manure. This manure, it is rich in nutrient, okay, it is rich in humus, which is organic matter. It also contains nutrients. Then this manure is utilized to increase the fertility of the soil. So advantage is, first of all, since it is natural product, so it does not harm the soil. Second is, it adds up humus to the soil, which improves the soil texture, okay, and also improves the water holding capacity. And microorganisms can also grow, the good microorganisms can also grow in this soil which is being manured. So in this way, they help in good growth of the crops. Next question, how does green manure differ from ordinary manure, and how is green manure produced? Now there are some plants like sun hemp or guar, okay, they are grown into the field before the cropping season starts. They are grown into the fields. Once they are grown to few inches, what happens? Then the field is plowed. What will happen? These plants will get mulched into the soil. There only they decompose and increase the fertility of the soil, because during decomposition they release nitrogen and phosphorus. So they are made in the field itself. That is why they are called green manure. Next question, differentiate between compost and vermicompost. Now, how is compost made? Compost is made by digging up huge pits and then putting up all kinds of waste like sewage waste, farm waste, vegetable peels, then cow dung, etc. They are put into the pits and they are allowed to decompose slowly. So it takes 3 to 4 months to convert these waste into compost. On the other hand, we have vermicompost. In vermicompost, what we do, we add up red worms or earthworms along with the waste. In this, for vermicomposting, only the plant waste which is from the farms and only the vegetable peels, only these are used. Okay, these are put into the pits along with some red worms and earthworms. These worms, they hasten the process, they make the process faster, and because they break down the larger food particles into very tiny particles which are easily decomposed. So it takes 1 to 2 months to produce vermicompost from the waste. Alright, so these are the few differences between compost and vermicompost. Next question, what are biofertilizers? So you know, fertilizers are utilized to improve the fertility of the soil, but these fertilizers are chemical compounds which are made in the industries. But biofertilizers are actually the cultures of blue-green algae, or some bacteria like Rhizobium. Alright, so culture of these organisms, these microorganisms are used and added to the soil. These cause nitrogen fixation. That is, they convert the nitrogen from the air to nitrogen compounds, and thus they improve the nitrogen content of the soil. So that is why they are called biofertilizers. They improve the fertility of the soil indirectly. Next question, why are manure and fertilizers used in the field? Now, when the farmers are growing crops in the field, these crops, they take up the nutrient from the soil. Now, so what will happen? The fertility, the nutrient content of the soil will reduce. So before we grow another set of crops, the fertility has to be improved. Okay, so that the next crops get enough nutrients for their proper growth. So that is why we use manures and fertilizers to increase the fertility of the soil, so that the crops will grow healthy and we'll get good yield from the land. Next question, compare the use of manures and fertilizers in maintaining soil fertility. So manures and fertilizers, they are quite different from each other, but they are both used to increase the fertility of the soil. Manure, first of all, they are not nutrient specific. On the other hand, fertilizers, they are nutrient specific. Okay, because on the packing of the fertilizers, it will be mentioned what are the nutrients present in the fertilizer and in what quantity. Secondly, it adds humus, which is the organic matter. Okay, it adds humus to the soil. Fertilizers do not provide this organic matter. Then this action is slow. This action of manure will be slow because they take a lot of time to decompose. For example, green manure, but you will be able to see very fast action of the fertilizers because they are providing the nutrients in concentrated amount. So in soil fertility case, we will say that manure, although they have delayed effect, but they maintain the fertility of the soil for a longer duration. They have long term benefit. On the other hand, fertilizers, they have short term benefit, because long term use of fertilizers affects the soil fertility because they are chemical compounds, they are artificial compounds. Next, the figure shows two crop fields that have been treated by manure and chemical fertilizers. So, I will just draw the graph here, okay, time and soil fertility. Alright. So, there were two plots, let us say A and B. Okay, plot A was treated with fertilizers. So, what will happen? There will be instant increase in the soil fertility, but over the time it will reduce. In case of B, it was treated with manure. So, there was a delayed action, but it was maintained. Alright. So, now let us take up some questions based on this graph. Firstly, why does plot B show sudden increase in the sudden increase and then gradual decrease in the yield? This is B, this is A. Alright. So, B is treated with fertilizers, A is treated with manure. Alright. So, question number 1, why does plot B, which was treated with fertilizers, it shows sudden increase and then gradual decrease? Because I told you this fertilizers, they have short term benefit. They instantly increase the fertility of the soil. So, the crops will grow very fast, but over the time it will decrease, because in fact they have harmful effect on the soil, because these are chemical compounds. Because of two reasons. Firstly, the humus, the fertilizers do not add the humus. Alright. Secondly, microorganisms cannot grow in this kind of soil which contains too much of chemicals. So, that is why over the years we will notice the fertility of the soil will decrease. Second question, why is the highest peak in plot A graph slightly delayed? So, in A graph the highest peak is slightly delayed, because manures, they do not contain high quantity of nutrients and they are not nutrient specific. That is why it is showing a delayed action. Thirdly, what is the reason for different patterns of the two graphs? I just discussed in the previous question that fertilizers, they instantly increase the fertility of the soil as they are nutrient specific and they contain high concentration of nutrients. On the other hand, manure are not nutrient specific, they do not contain high quantity or high concentration of nutrients. That is why these two graphs are showing different patterns. Next question, why is excess use of fertilizers detrimental for the environment? So, I just told you in the previous question also, first reason is the humus or the organic matter of the soil is not replenished in the soil. So, the texture or the quality of the soil will deteriorate over the years. Second, the growth of microorganisms is harmed. Okay. The fertilizers, they do not allow the growth of the microorganisms because they are chemical compounds. These microorganisms are healthy for the soil as well as for the growth of the crops, because they cause nitrogen fixation. So, over the years the need for adding fertilizers keeps on increasing. So, the cost of input also keeps on increasing. That is why we say it is detrimental for the environment. And third and very important is they cause water pollution. Okay. If excessive fertilizers are used, so and they are not absorbed by the plant, what will happen? They during rainfall, the excess fertilizer, they get dissolved in the water and they are flow into the along with the water, they enter the water bodies like rivers and they pollute these sources. Next question, explain any one method of crop production which ensures higher yield. So, I have discussed so many methods of improving the crop production, like different adding manures and fertilizers, or using cropping pattern like intercropping, mixed cropping, or then thirdly by using chemicals like pesticides, weedicides, fungicides. You can describe any one of them in detail. So what I'll suggest to you is you take up intercropping, because in that case you can show the diagram, you can show its advantages, and you can discuss it nicely. Next question. What are the advantages of intercropping and crop rotation? So intercropping, I hope you remember that in this what happens, the field is divided into columns and alternatively crops are grown. Crop A here and crop B here. So alternatively a few rows of two crops are grown. This is called intercropping. While in case of crop rotation, different crops are growing in different seasons of the year, throughout the year, like Kharif plus Rabi plus one more third crop can be grown one after the other in succession. That is crop rotation. So advantages of intercropping are, firstly, that nutrients of the soil are efficiently utilized. Alright, so such crop A and crop B are chosen such that they do not compete with each other for nutrients. So if crop A requires a certain nutrient, crop B requires certain other nutrients. So they do not compete with each other, both of them will utilize the nutrients of the soil. And secondly, there is an insurance from crop failure. Okay, so if an insect actually affects this crop B, only this one row of crop B will get affected. It will not pass on to the next crop because there is a gap in between. Alright. On the other hand, crop rotation, it improves the yield in a given year. Okay, the farmer gets 2 or 3 crops of yield of crops in a given year. And if leguminous crops are grown, it reduces the requirement of fertilizers, because these leguminous crops, they increase the amount of nitrogen in the soil. So these are few advantages of intercropping and crop rotation. Next question, write a short note on organic farming. So as the name suggests, in organic farming, there is a minimal use or no use of chemicals at all. Okay, pesticides, weedicides, fertilizers, they are not used. So instead of that, first of all, manure is used, like compost or vermicompost, which are naturally made. Then biofertilizers are used. Biofertilizers like cultures of blue-green algae, which improve the soil fertility. During storage, then neem leaves or turmeric leaves. Neem leaves or turmeric powder. It is sprayed so that pathogens do not grow in that. So you will see all natural things are used. Natural substances are used during production as well as during storage. So there is minimal or no use of chemicals in organic farming. So in a way, it protects the environment from the harmful effects of chemicals.